So it's good to encrypt your data using all the tools available, but what happens when you're faced with the police wanting to search your digital device? Well, the best tool you have then is to know your rights. And thanks to the Electronic Frontier Foundation and their very helpful guides, we know what to do when the police come around asking to search your phone or computer. Tonight I'm going to be talking about what your rights are and how to act around the police, essentially giving you a brief overview of the guides the EFF has available on their website, and you can see the URLs right there on this first slide. Now, I am not a lawyer, and I am not giving you actual legal advice. I am just sharing with you what I learned from reading a bunch of stuff on the internet because I care about these things. But, again, it is not actual legal advice. Please use these suggestions at your own discretion. So, the rights protecting your digital advice are pretty much the same as that are granted you by the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. You are protected against unreasonable search and seizure of your phone, just like any other property you have. With a few exceptions, you're not obliged to let the authorities into your device, so we say the Fourth Amendment mostly applies here. We need to borrow a bit from Mei's threat model from the previous presentation and figure out who we are and what we are protecting. We're going to go over 4 roles in this presentation that fit into that threat model, and those include a person going about your day, a protester, activist, or someone documenting a protest, or the police themselves, an employee at a job, and a person crossing the border into the US. So the rights as they apply are different for each of these roles, and I'll go over each in a little bit more detail. But before I do, I want to say that if you are not a citizen of the US, you are still, amazingly enough, protected by the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. But your interaction with the police may be more complicated depending upon your immigration status. Unfortunately, that situation is beyond the scope of this presentation, but there are resources available to you if you are not a citizen, and the police are compelling you to let them search your device. Besides the EFF, you can contact the National Lawyers Guild and locally Somos en Pueblo Unido, a wonderful organization based in Santa Fe, or the NM chapter of the Dreamers. These will have special legalized resources that can be made available to you as an immigrant, but keep in mind, the following tips still do apply because you're protected by the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. So the first situation that I want to go over is you're just going about your day and Officer Johnson comes up to you and says, "I'd like to search your phone." What do you do then? Well, you should probably have already encrypted your device. If you encrypt your device, it'll be protected against easy access to it, and you have the right to not give up your passphrase under any circumstances. The best protection is a full passphrase with encryption, as screen locks, like the 4 digits that you enter on your iPhone or your iPad, or the pattern match you do on Android, they're easily bypassed. Now, a grand jury or a judge may try to compel you to give up your passphrase and decrypt your device, but the police can't. And if you find yourself in a situation where a judge or jury is trying to make you give up your passphrase, please call the EFF. They'll help you out. Now, you have your encrypted device, and Officer Johnson wants to search it. Well, don't consent to a search. Say, "I do not consent to a search." In fact, don't say anything else, and say nothing at all about your passphrase or how you protected your device. You have the right to be silent, and you can ask to speak to a lawyer before any further questioning. So keep saying that you don't consent to a search. If the officer has a warrant and they come to your home, don't open the door, but ask them to slide the warrant underneath the door so you can verify it. You want to make sure that the warrant is perfect. It needs 4 things to be correct: your correct name and address, totally typo-free, the scope of the warrant, meaning what they can search, like your house or a part of your house even, or maybe your car, a judge's signature, and a deadline that cannot have been passed. If any of these are wrong or missing, give the warrant back to them and refuse the search. Just slide it back under the door and tell them to come back with a valid warrant. Use that time that you just bought to encrypt your device. If the warrant is valid, or if they're conducting a warrantless search on your device without your consent, contact a lawyer if you have one, or the EFF if you don't. Finally, be careful about using biometrics like fingerprints to lock your device or retinal scans. I'm sure they'll have them eventually. Anyways, police can compel you to unlock a device with your fingerprint as these are part of your identity and the government already has them on file anyways. So if you use a fingerprint lock, turn off your phone so the fingerprint is flushed from memory and your passphrase is the one thing needed to unlock the device. So, let's say you're an activist at a protest or documenting a protest, or the police themselves doing something. These special tips may be useful to you. Remember, you can legally film the police anytime, in any public space. If they tell you to stop filming, say you are legally filming and it is constitutionally protected what you're doing. Also, be sure to live stream in case they don't care about your constitutional rights, and most importantly, protect yourself over your device. In fact, you should consider what's called a burner phone. These are relatively inexpensive phones you can use in protests or as an alternative to your actual personal phone if you ever need that. The idea is that there's nothing important on these phones. They are single use and can be lost without any personal data being sacrificed. Regardless of what kind of phone you bring to a protest, remember, encrypt your device. This makes it harder for the police or anyone else to get at whatever you are recording or communicating to your fellow activists. Finally, mass arrests are unfortunately not uncommon at protests and actions, so remember that if you are arrested, once you're released, you should get your device back. If not, file a motion for it to be released. Even if the police put it into forfeiture or think it holds evidence of a crime, you can still get it back, but you need to file a motion. So, next role, what if you're an employee and have a work computer? Well, in that case, don't use your work computer for personal communications of any kind. Use it only for work. This isn't just what your boss wants, it's also good for you, as your employer can consent to searches of computers they give you, and furthermore, you don't know if they're logging your computer activity or how they're logging it. In fact, they probably are. So you should also encrypt your network traffic as much as possible, especially if your computer is your only computer and you need to use it for personal reasons, occasionally. Or maybe all the time, because it's your only computer. And finally, if your boss ever asks you for your personal passwords, like to Facebook, tell them no, even if they say it is in your contract. It's illegal for employers to ask employees for their personal passwords, and any contract with such a clause in it is totally illegal. For that matter, make sure you don't mix personal passwords and work passwords. So, one last role, and it's a very special one. What if you're crossing the border into the United States? In that case, I'm sorry to say, the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply. Customs and Border Patrol agents at the U.S. are empowered to search and often confiscate anything entering the United States, including your digital device. So what do? Well, as usual, encrypt your device and turn it off before you reach the border. Like with the police, you cannot be compelled to give up your passphrase to a device. And even though border agents can confiscate it and forensically search it, it will be difficult for them and more private for you if the device is protected by a strong passphrase and encryption. The EFF has even more tips in their guides on how to protect your data at the border, so check them out. Do a search on the internet. They're very useful, and some of them will be more or less to your liking depending upon how much of a hassle you want to go through before, during, and after the border, and how comfortable you are with some technical work. So, lastly, some U.S. states provide stronger protections than others against confiscation at the border. That is, the agents in these states need probable cause to confiscate your device. So try to enter the United States through them. These states include Arizona, shockingly enough, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Alaska, and Hawaii. Some territories also provide these protections, but the state that we're in, New Mexico, doesn't. Also remember, international airports count as borders. Now, while this presentation described your rights and some suggested behaviors when dealing with the police, it does not, unfortunately, describe how the police will actually act. As we've seen time and again, the police wield great power, and they will not always act in accordance with your rights. So even if you flex your rights as suggested in these presentations, the police may still illegally search, confiscate, or even destroy your phone or computer. In this case, it is best not to obstruct them. Just note their name and badge number if you can, stay silent, contact a lawyer or the EFF, and above all, protect yourself so you can share what happened with people who care, and then we can signal boost your story. For more complete information and advice, please visit the EFF, from which I culled much of this information. Oh, and, well, for that matter, thanks EFF for all the great work you do. More resources on how to interact with the police can also be found on copwatch.org as well. So, thanks for watching, and be secure out there.